So this is a work by Diego Velázquez. It's titled The Water Cellar of Seville, and it was done from 1618 to 1622. We can look at his work and see that there is a lot of very strong contrast, and that's because light is just coming in from the left and going to the right. And this is causing there to be light on the face and the body of those more in the foreground. And this lighting, this dramatic lighting, is called tenebrism, which is a form of chiaroscuro. This is also an awesome work because it helps lead our eye around the painting. The artist does this through lighting and the positioning of the figures. Figures are all vertically positioned and they have kind of a triangular composition. It's not a perfect triangle, but you can see that it's there. And there's also quite a few different triangles that we can see that are being formed. You can see it in kind of like the pottery and where it's placed, and also in the right man's cloak. Velázquez also uses a lot of natural colors, earthly tones. His work almost kind of feels quite monochromatic. There's not very many colors. You can see that there's figures in his drawing again, and we can also see that there's these vases. So the combination of figures and still life elements is called the bodegones, and those are works that just represent daily life and have either food or other elements in them that are still life. We can see how he creates depth by placing someone really in the far background. You can't really see him. He blends in with the plain background pretty well, and then we can see the younger man and the middle-aged gentleman in like the midground, and then we see these faces more in the foreground. And so he creates a sense of depth with that. He also creates a theatrical element with his work because the background is just dark. There's not very much detail with the background except for the man that we can just barely make out.
Analyzing this piece, we can see that the three men can be a representation of the three stages of life: young, mid-aged, and elderly. Water sellers during this time were often seen as beggars or cheats who were known to argue with their customers. I feel like this artist shows great respect for the poor as he depicts no ill will that the stereotype with them would pertain to, as he calmly converses and sells to these two men. It can also be questioned if this is an accurate or idealizing representation of this work of art.
That leads into the historical analysis of it. Is this Velázquez's way of idealizing rather not in figures and proportions, but in like socioeconomical status? So there's the idea of, is he idealizing this representation and not portraying the true nature of the poverty class? On the flip side, the other question is instead he's not idealizing, but he's just giving them dignity and monumentality that they haven't had before. Because these are figures that are very easily looked over. They're a dime a dozen, especially in a big city during the summer. And so from a historical aspect, that's not something we would know about. We would just dismiss them as just, another poor person doing a job. By choosing this figure and his occupation to paint, Velázquez kind of gives water sellers a place in time that maybe they wouldn't have had before.
With this piece, we can see how the young man and the middle-aged man don't really connect with each other. And I just thought of how in our everyday life, we go to the grocery store, we have this person help us check out our groceries and how we're not able to really connect with them. And so I just think of how there's so much lost because we're not able to connect with these people. There's so much that we can learn and gain from serving and helping others and sharing our knowledge with them. So that's what I kind of saw in this work, is the lack of just connection, true connection.
I enjoy the design of the still life and the way that they depicted the ceramics. I also enjoy the way that the man in the background is almost not visible, which could indicate that the part of our lives that is between youth and elderly is either inconsequential or brief compared to the experiences that we have during those two times in our lives.
Going back to Whitney's point about connection, I think the water seller seems of a slightly lower class than the boy he's serving. And so it makes me think of a common thread that all humans share. No matter who you are, what status you have, everyone still needs water in the summer. And it kind of humbles the rich young man and then brings up or humanizes the water seller, brings them to the same plane of existence, I think.